Charlottesville's lightning rod. Wow! Weekdays at noon on News Radio 98.9 and AM 1070 WINA.
And I wanted to fly. Water me down from the river of life. Wanted to fly on an island.
All right, coming up after the next break, here in studio, Emma Deere, Amanda Nelson from the LifeSpring Pregnancy Centers with an upcoming event and an invitation for you. Right now, we go to Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy, a member of STARS and plaintiff in defending Arlington's suit. We have been talking on this program over the course of the last year or so with various individuals on the Reconciliation Monument, and now the Department of Defense Deep State is quashing the return. We're going to get the latest. Colonel Kennedy, welcome to the Shilling Show. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Could you tell us just a little bit for people who are not familiar with the history of the Reconciliation Monument, how it came to be and what it signifies?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'll keep this the short version. After the Spanish-American War, the last president who served in combat during the Civil War, President McKinley, as a gesture of reconciliation with the South, recommended a number of things, but one of the things led to the building of a memorial to honor the Confederate soldiers that he allowed to be buried in Arlington Cemetery. They started moving those soldiers from the Washington, D.C. area into what became known as Jackson Circle. They put them in a circular pattern, and at the same time, there was a move to build a memorial to the dead soldiers, which he was unable to see because he was assassinated. But his successive presidents after him allowed this to happen. 1914, Woodrow Wilson, along with the Grand Army of the Republic, which is the Union Army survivors, dedicated this memorial to the dead Confederate soldiers there. And so for over 100 years, until December of 2023, this memorial stood in the Confederate section of Arlington, which has almost 500 Confederate soldiers buried around it. The most notable soldier is the world-renowned sculptor Ezekiel Moses, who was Moses Ezekiel, who was a former Confederate soldier, the first Jewish graduate of VMI, asked to be buried at the base of the memorial, making it his headstone. And the Army decided, when the Naming Commission recommended to the then Secretary of the Army, Lloyd Austin, that it be removed because it was not a U.S. memorial, it was Confederate, that it be taken down. He acted on the recommendation. It wasn't a law, on the recommendation to remove it. It has now been removed for about a year and a half, and it's sitting in a storage area in Virginia. It has been illegally transferred to the state of Virginia surreptitiously under the radar.
This is a very problematic story because, first of all, it sounds like this was not a Confederate monument. The Confederacy was long gone. So how could it possibly be that it was authorized by Woodrow Wilson and McKinley before that? So where were they getting that contention that it was a Confederate monument when there was no Confederacy for many decades?
They made it up. It's a memorial to soldiers. It's not a monument to the Confederacy. It never was. It was a memorial to the dead soldiers. They took offense to it because Moses Ezekiel, who served in the Confederate Army, had a frieze around the base. It's a set of bronze tablets put into the base of the memorial that showed scenes from the war as he remembered them. Mm-hmm. And it had two black people in there, which they assume, we don't know for a fact, I mean, it's a legitimate assumption, they may have been enslaved. We don't know. 7% of the people in the South were free. They could have been free, but we don't know. No one ever said, Ezekiel didn't say that. but he did put one in a Confederate uniform, and we know there were soldiers that were black. I have friends whose ancestors were black soldiers, and a woman who was a person caring for a young child. That caused offense. They said that is not right. You know, we need to take this memorial down because of that.
So the memorial, and we're talking with Colonel Ed Kennedy and the Defend Arlington lawsuit. So the memorial was taken down under the direction of Lloyd Austin. Tell us the genesis of the lawsuit, what you're asking for, and where we are now in the suit.
We tried to prevent it from being taken down, and unfortunately the federal judge who heard the case broke the law. What he did was unethical. He was invited by the Army up to Arlington during the conduct of our suit without our representatives being present. That's not ethical. In fact, could be illegal. And he allowed them to continue with it. So then we filed for a subsequent appeal, which is ongoing at this time, to replace the memorial back on the pedestal where it belongs, in the cemetery.
So where does the Deep State come into all of this in the Department of Defense? Because it sounds almost like they're playing a waiting game. Have they been instructed at some official level to restore this monument?
No, sir. We don't know what they're doing. We know that they're trying to get around it by illegally giving it to the state of Virginia. They didn't announce it. It was under the table. They say now it belongs to Virginia. We know that it was not a law to have it removed. It was recommended by the Naming Commission that Austin remove it. He didn't have to. He could have said, I take your recommendation, but I disapprove of removing it. So the objective is to get it put back where it belongs. We think that President Trump just told the Interior Department to put all the memorials and monuments back as they were in 2020.
Yes.
But that doesn't affect the Department of Defense, who owns the monument or the memorial. It sits on their land. So DOD is the one who we're suing to have it put back.
What about Governor Youngkin and all of this? Has he said anything? Is he advocating for what you're advocating?
We haven't heard a thing from him, and unfortunately, he's part and parcel of the problem. He's offered to take it and place it on a battlefield in Virginia where it does not belong, and that causes all sorts of other problems. But what we want to do is get this deep state, the lawyers who are telling the current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, that he can't put it back. That's false. There's a number of legal reasons why he can put it back and should put it back. But we have these deep state lawyers now involved in it throwing their hands up going, it's a done deal, we can't do anything. That's not right. We do have the rationale and the legal reasons for putting it back.
So let's find out where we stand now as far as the process goes. It sounds like you have a good case. Going forward, can you get the president's attention, or do you think that you can get into a favorable court that will rule on the law and not on emotion?
We would like to say so, but we've already faced one federal judge who broke the law and ethics by refusing to have our representatives available. What we're asking for is people go to the president. We have an online petition at www.trumpeopetition.us. So it's Trump Executive Order Petition.us, and ask the president to please put it back by executive order. We can go through the legal means, and what they're trying to do is drag this out and bankrupt our funds, because we have to go around with our hat in hand asking for donations to fund this. It's very expensive, and they know that. So what we'd like to do is get President Trump to put it back, and last resort, go to the courts. We think we have an outstanding case, but what they're trying to do is drive us into bankruptcy and, keep us running the clock on our lawyers.
Are we able to get more information and make donations at defendarlington.org?
Yes, sir, absolutely. www.defendarlington.org.
Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy, thank you for the report, and thank you for fighting this fight. It's certainly worthy of our national heritage to restore this, and you have great intention. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today on the Shilling Show.
Sir, thank you for having me. I have a vested interest in this. I wore the uniform for 29 years. I have ancestors from Alabama buried up there, and then I got fired from my Army job for this same political correctness garbage. So there's a vested interest here.
We appreciate it very much. Please keep us posted.